You don't want to get beat down the middle. You get beat down the sides, you get beat on an angle, fine, life. Middle, never. So the way you deal with that is if the ball's here and it's going to be attacked and it ends up hurting their team. When third shot drops, in dinking up at the net, there's actually one of the game studies we did, there was 2 dinks. They're identical dinks, identical spots. The first time, the players respect the X, the ball goes through, the player that's supposed to receive it hits it, no problem. The second time, exact same shot in the same rally, the player on the right reaches over, breaks the X for no reason, and they end up losing the rally. Wherever you're on the world, I hope you're doing great. This video, we're going to talk about breaking the X. This is part of the Respect the X concept. If you're not familiar with Respect the X, I'm going to put a link up here. You can check out several videos on respecting the X. Super powerful strategy in terms of understanding who takes what shot. But as with most rules, or pretty much every rule, there's exceptions. So today we're going to talk about 3 exceptions to respecting the X, and those are situations where you want to break the X. If we haven't met before, my name is Tony Roig. I am a professional pickleball coach as well as a professional pickleball player. We developed Respect the X here in our channel, and so it's a strategy that we are very familiar with because it's something that we developed. So let's talk first about the X generally. Like I said, I'll put the link up here and also down in the show notes so you can learn more about it. But essentially, the X works like this. So I have the 4 players on the court here. The X connects these 2 players and these 2 players. The idea being that if the ball is traveling along the axis that connects those 2 players, the X, normally the player on the other end of the axis is going to want to hit that shot. So for example, if there's a serve and a return to serve that's coming across like this, so it's traveling in this direction, this player is the one that more often than not should hit that ball if you're respecting the X, okay? Now, there are situations where you want to break the X. The first one of those situations that I want to address is covering the middle. A really common error that you see out on the courts, more at the intermediate and lower advanced play, definitely beginner play, you see a lot of middle errors. It looks like this. You have a serve, return a serve, okay, around here. You have this player coming up to attack the ball. This player's moving forward. What happens is this player will let the ball travel through the middle here, right? Let it go through that middle there, and it creates a problem for this player, often resulting in the loss of a point. So that's a situation you don't want to have. We have an entire video on covering the middle. I'll link that to one up here that shows it to you how we do it on the court and how we cover that middle. Covering that middle is super important. You don't want to get beat down the middle. You get beat down the sides, you get beat on an angle, fine, life. Middle, never. So the way you deal with that is if the ball's here and it's going to be attacked through this middle, right? Even though the X says that this player should hit it, this player is going to come over here and it's going to stop the ball there, right? With a volley and then send it back over, breaking the X in order to cover the middle. So covering the middle is a perfectly good reason to break the X in that situation. The second one, it's a dirty word. A lot of players don't like even the word. I put the word up here and I cringe at writing it because a lot of players hate this word. But poaching, folks, perfectly fine part of the sport. If you have a situation where you can poach and do something more aggressive with the ball than your partner can, it's a perfectly good time to break the X. And we're going to use the same example again. So here you have this, the return has gone here. Let's move this server up some, right? So these players are moving in on this short return here. This player is still moving up. Let's say instead of a drive down the middle, right, you have a floater around here. So you have something that's kind of floating over. And so what are our options, right? Coming from here. What are our options? If we respect the X, then we're going to let that ball go through to this player. Even though it's floaty and it's not going to hurt the player, right? It's not going to attack the player. Kind of lose opportunity, right? So instead, what you want to do is, as the ball is floating and traveling through here, this player comes over, puts their paddle on it, attacks it, right? And probably ends up winning the rally with a poach. That's an example of breaking the X. The X would say this player hits it, this player is going to break the X, but breaking the X for a reason, right? Because there's a reason to do it. And here's the thing, right? Respect the X is one of these principles that applies. It's always there, right? So it's always applicable, right? It's always in effect, if you will. The question is, do you want to break the X, right? And breaking the X can happen in these two and the third situation I'm going to show you in a second. But you want to do it intentionally. You want to do it because you thought about it. You don't want to just reach across and break the X for no reason. And if you check out the videos in the playlist where we do some game study breakdowns and things like that to show you how it works, you're going to see situations where players are breaking the X for no reason, and it ends up hurting their team. When third shot drops, in dinking up at the net, there's actually one of the game studies we did, there was 2 dinks. They're identical dinks, identical spots. The first time, the players respect the X, the ball goes through, the player that's supposed to receive it hits it, no problem. The second time, exact same shot in the same rally, the player on the right reaches over, breaks the X for no reason, and they end up losing the rally. So respect the X is always there. When you're breaking the X, do it because it makes sense to do it. While you're thinking about being intentional, if you enjoy this kind of content, right, if you want to go deep in pickleball, hit a subscribe button down there and hit that like button down there. It'll help you get more videos just like this, where we go deep on these kind of subjects that are actually going to help you with your game. No fluff here. It's all stuff that really helps. All right, let me give you a third reason for breaking the X. The third reason is it's just necessary, right? So whenever it's necessary, and this is important, right? It's not willy-nilly. It's not just, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I don't have a reason. If you have a reason to break it, you can break it. And I'm going to give you the best example I can give you is on the third shot. So what'll happen here is you're playing in a competitive setting, right? Say you're playing in a tournament, league play, something, competitive. Now what's happening is you have your serve and you have your return of serve. So it's landing here, but it's going in this direction, right? Now, this forehand in the middle stuff, get that out of here. Forget about forehand in the middle. That is not a good axiom to use. Even though it's this player's backhand normally, because this player usually is right-handed, right? Even though this player's backhand, normally the ball going into their body is going to be a better shot for them to handle. Again, that's addressed in those Respect the X videos I mentioned on that playlist. You'll be able to check those out there. Normally we want this player to hit it. However, if the player's missing a lot, right, and just under pressure, it's just not working out, then no problem with this player coming over and taking that third shot because it's necessary. It's necessary in that situation because this player is just not getting the job done, right? And you can have a conversation with your partner and say, listen, I'm going to come over. Let me take another couple of thirds, take some pressure off of you, get us into a bit of a rhythm. That's a great example of a situation where it's okay to break the X because it's going to be the best situation for your team. The moral of the story is respect the X always applies. Respect the X is always there. If you want to break it, you can break it, but break it because you have a reason, like covering the middle, like poaching, or whenever necessary to break the X. I'm going to put a link up here to some other resources that you can look at in terms of improving your game. Some of them are, I'll put a course over here inside our academy that you can check out. That'll help you reduce your errors in your game and just play better. And I'll put up here another YouTube video you can check out to continue your learning in the Into Pickle ecosystem. Hope you're doing well, and I'll see you in the next video.